first person who's going to be Alicia Johnson. Alicia is the IPS superintendent. So, she's very, her first anniversary as the IPS superintendent, I think is coming up soon, which is next month, really. And, can you imagine starting as a superintendent of a large school system, and on your anniversary, you are faced with pandemic, we're faced with technology issues and issues to do with parents and families. So I'm going to ask Alicia, can you tell us a little bit about your role, what you do with IPS, and then what is your digital transformation plan, especially given the disparity that is going to occur based on, some of the things that we've seen. Because if you look at IPS, you have almost about 35 to 39,000 students who don't have access or broadband access. So how do we continue education in that field? So Alicia, can you tell us a bit about yourself and tell us what your digital transformation plan is?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thankful to be with you this morning. Thanks for the invitation to join. I appreciate seeing everybody's feelings. I think we're all in similar places, lots of different emotions, particularly this morning waking up. So I am right there with you, and just had to really pray this morning, and so glad to be able to be in community with other people this morning. So thank you for the opportunity. So I have the honor of serving as the superintendent of Indianapolis Public Schools, our largest school system in the state of Indiana. George, you are right. I'll be coming officially on to my first year. I was appointed in June and formally voted in July, so getting clear. So it's been quite the year of a first year doing the work. But essentially my job is to lead our team to the accomplishment of the mission and vision as established by our school board. And so that is to make sure our children basically get to lead lives of choice, that they are critical thinkers, that they are able to engage in a diverse community, and they're equipped with the skills and the knowledge and the competencies to do that. So there are about 31,000 students in our IPS family of schools that I lead and support. So that's the big part of the job, the overall kind of high level of the work. That includes our academic work, our operations, our finances, all of the things related to making an organization operate are all the things that I'm responsible for. So we, as you noted, prior to this pandemic, we had technology in our schools. We were operating under a 3-to-1 ratio with our devices, meaning for every 3 students, there was 1 computer, laptop for students to access, which for the most part worked relatively well. So you can imagine a classroom set of computers that perhaps was shared by 2 teachers in a grade level. Not everybody was on a computer all day long. So if I needed it for half of the day, I got it. If you needed it half the day, you got it. You were able to sort of manage that schedule. As you could clearly imagine, come March 13th, when the decision was made for all of our schools to immediately close, a 3-to-1 when you are only at home is no longer going to cut it, when that is your primary way to access your learning. So we had to make some decisions. One, we don't have enough devices, again, in the school to cover everybody. So we prioritized our high school students. And some of that was because of the direction from the Indiana Department of Education around credits. We know in the high school space, those students had to stay on track to get their credits for graduation. And there were some shifts and adjustments made to earning those credits during this time. But we had to make sure kids could stay on track. So that meant us going into our elementary schools, getting our devices out of the elementary schools, bringing them to 2 central locations, and then dispersing those out to our high school students. So we literally set up a pretty complex logistics operation in about 2 weeks, whereas we got those computers out, wiped them, made sure they were ready to go out, packaged them, and then direct mailed them to our students' homes. And then we also ordered hotspots, because as you will also know, if you look at Savvy, the work that they've done, and look at the map of internet connectivity and look at the IPS district, you can see there are a number of places where, in communities where people aren't connected, they don't have the internet access. So we also purchased 1,500 hotspots so that if our children needed a device and connectivity, we could get that to them. That's going to continue to be the biggest hurdle for us to overcome. We are already assuming at some point next year we'll be back in a home learning situation, because even if we bring kiddos back to school, which we are working to figure out how to do, there will be cases of COVID-19, which will require schools likely to be closed for some time and students to have to go back to home learning. So we've got to make sure they can get connected to the internet easily and quickly. We've approximated it'll cost us about $2 million to have the hotspots for the children who need them for the extent of the school year. That's a massive cost. I believe there are ways for us to, as a community, with our corporate citizens, determine a way to have internet access for all of our kids as a basic access to that, same way we do other utilities. But that is to be still figured out. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
where we are now.
All right. So that's a good start. And I've got a couple of follow-ups on that, in terms of the fact that you have 4 children, I believe. And, so you are an educator not only for our kids, but also you have your own. So I would like to know more about your own experience at home. But at this point, I'd like to move on to Khalil Moafrika. Now, Khalil is the Center Director for Early Learning Indiana. And one of the things that I really do like about Khalil is he's really focused on some of the things that we can do to start our young people at a place where they can, focus on their interest and use technology as a bridge to do that. So, Khalil, can you give us some ideas as to some of the rudimentary lessons that we can, teach our children and their parents, and how we can use technology to bridge that? So, if you don't have internet access or broadband access, or you don't have a laptop or computer, and you're going to fall way, way, way behind, what are some of the things that students or parents can do whilst we are waiting for IPS and all the government and other people to come up with whatever they come up with? What are some of the things that we can actually be doing to also help bridge those gaps? So, Khalil, can you help us with breaking down that idea, please?
Sure, sure. Good morning. First of all, good morning. Thank you, George. Let me make a point of clarification. I'm formerly a Center Director for Early Learning Indiana. I've had the great opportunity to do some more community-focused work since that time. First of all, just let me just share that a little bit, because I know I want to try to be succinct and concise relative to time. So let me try to give a little introduction, which will give some context to who I am, which hopefully give you somewhat of an understanding of my perspective, and I'll share some real pointed details. So number one, I'm a longtime educator here in the city of Indianapolis. Had the opportunity to teach the entire continuum, all the way up to currently adjunct professor at IUPUI. But my focus is in early childhood. I am a strong proponent of early childhood, and that is really derived out of my own personal experience. My wife and I, we have 5 children. Ages 20 to 3, and we've had the opportunity to unschool all of them for at least a part of the time in our development. They're also students and graduates for IPS, charter, and private schools as well. So feel like we've had the opportunity to be very comprehensive and open, and really try to let our children's interests drive our perspective relative to teaching. And that kind of sets the foundation for my philosophy around education. In my practical work as well, I'm a board member and a member of the steering community with Kepler Institute. We have created, and this is just the first practical example, and I'll give more context behind it. We created a website, a hub for parents, Homebound EDU, and it gives an opportunity for parents, just as simple, practical as a process you can think of. Parents are at home, have been at home, in some cases having success, and in some cases struggling, with trying to meet the needs of their children. And so we've created a cadre of educators to kind of, transcend the education continuum all the way into behavior analysis and some therapy in elementary and early childhood, even some bilingual teachers. So parents can call and ask questions about, hey, what can I do with my child who is not going to look at their e-learning today or doesn't care about or whatever. So that is has been the most recent iteration of my work. Now, I say that to say is that I have a different aspect and approach to education. One, and I just say this, we also had the opportunity about a decade ago to found a community school with the Kepler Institute, and opportunity for us to embed some real foundational values into educational process. So that said, this moment for people like me and people who are considered community educators is not new per se. You know, we've always, oppressed people in America have always had to adjust and accommodate to the world around us and deal and operate in resource-strapped situations and everything. So though we are in another feeling peril state, these opportunities always provide what we could call some low-hanging fruit. So in that, here are some things that I think, just based on kind of all that context, that we can do relative to some digital transformation. Number one, and not to disparage any of the efforts by any traditional educators or anything, because I've been in schools and I know that it is wrong to lambast schools. Maybe the model needs some adjusting, but I understand the intentions and the great work that teachers, administrators do daily. So that said, it is important that we do not try to replicate the traditional model with our current tools. As I think about and speak to those who don't have, it is almost contradictory to say in our narrative that we know inherently there are children who do not have access to internet, thousands, tens of thousands of children that don't, and yet we still operate in a traditional model, and that is, to me, derived in a very outcome-based ideology. Won't get into that. That's a conversation for another day. But I think the first thing in this moment, relative to our worldview, we have to release and move away from the notion that education is designed for us and for our children to pass tests and to be able to meet these particular standards. Sorry. Education is about connecting with children, finding a place where they connect in the learning, and then giving them an opportunity to expand and expound on that learning in a myriad of opportunities. This moment for me has created opportunity for people, as Ms. Fair told us a few weeks ago, to take back your child's education, one, and think about the fundamentals and rudiments that children really need, the building blocks of education. Children are home. These are opportunities for parents to utilize technology, not to try to recreate the model, but to supplement your children's interest in these moments right now. So instead of taking and utilizing the computer to try to hurry up and catch up with worksheets and all those things, you take the computer to get up in the morning, and maybe you take your children, create a video in the morning of them exercising, and then you take that opportunity to share that with some peers. Or you use your technology to document the sun setting or rising in the morning and things like that. So again, we can get into more details in the breakout about that, but utilizing it as a supplement rather as a tool to recreate the traditional model. Number two, as adults, and this is, some may be upset about this point, but there is a narrative exists about the digital divide where there are children that do not have. In the urban inner city communities, in my community, I live on the west side of Indianapolis, in every Family Dollar, Dollar General, park, every place I go, you can guarantee that most children have access to an iPhone, an iPad, a PS4, an Xbox or something. And so I know what the numbers say and I know what the statistics say, but I also know that evidence can also be anecdotal. And I'm telling you what I see and other people know. Our children are not lacking in screen time. We know that's the truth. But what the narrative does is take the onus off adults to not also practice proper and modeling technology habits. For instance, how often in inner city, our communities, are our children watching adults listen to Audible? How often are adults listening to podcasts, watching Nova.org, watching documentaries, utilizing technology ourselves in a way? Because we know, and this is for the educators in the room, the way children learn primarily is through mimicking and imitating, especially young children. And so we want to be real and honest about things that we can do. Yeah, we can create, we can feed into the narrative of what we don't have, but we can also be honest about what we do have. And there are things right here under our nose that we can do daily. Every day, our children should be watching us and modeling. We should be modeling for them those behaviors that we want them to also have. So
okay,
that
so
said, I say number two is we have to. Yes,
before you
sir.
get to your third point, I would like to kind of link, because now we have Alicia who is really fighting to, get the funding and some grants to make sure we have the access. One of the issues that you are talking about is really supplement what parents or we can do to also help mitigate
My
that
last point.
that
Yes,
pressure.
sir. Yes,
Yes.
sir.
So I'm going to give you some time to kind of expand on that a little bit. But at this point, I want to bring Brandon in. Brandon is the CEO for Mind Trust. Brandon, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Mind Trust, what your intentions are with Mind Trust, how you are really helping, especially limited resource children, helping to educate them, and then tell us a little bit about what you are doing around, minority leadership within some of your charter school movement. So go ahead, Brandon.
All
Welcome.
right, sounds great. I just want to say thank you so much for having me this morning. So the Mind Trust was originally founded in 2006. So we are a local group that really has a mission to ensure that all kids in our city have access to a great school. And last probably 2 or 3 years, we've really tried to move forward in a new direction, to be honest with you. I think that there's a lot of work that's happened over the past probably 20 years of education reform in our city. I think a lot of it's been good, though I think a lot of it was probably not done in the best ways. And I think as an organization, we've just really tried to put a stake in the ground around, one, listening and more effectively responding to our community, and two, I think acknowledging racial equity's critical role to really trying to get to the just world that many of us are trying to work towards. And I think what that means is that too often when we talk about trying to reform our education system, many times it's the white establishment and it's existing groups in our city who kind of naturally have a lot of influence and power, who might have really good intentions but don't always listen to the folks that are most impacted. And I think over time in our city, I think a lot of good stuff's happened, but the work in general has always not been led by those that are most impacted by many of the injustices that we say we're trying to address. And at the Mind Trust, we feel really strongly that we need to support and grow outstanding school leaders and educators, and in particular school leaders and educators who reflect the backgrounds of our kids. Because right now, as most of you clearly know, the kids that we're serving are primarily students of color, and the vast majority of the educators in our city are not. And we need to make sure that we have very intentional strategies to ensure that we are trying to recruit and to grow and to retain high quality educators of color. And at the Mind Trust, I think that we have a responsibility to ensure that we're leveraging the privilege that we do have to really make sure that we are resourcing and really supporting real efforts in our community that are led by many of the people who are most impacted. So the last 3 months have made me think a lot about how the K-12 education system is inseparable from a lot of the systems that we have in our society. And, I think I've heard Alicia say this multiple times. None of the inequities that we're seeing right now are new, but we're seeing them in a new way. And I think we're seeing them in a way that maybe has the potential to open up many people's eyes in our community around structural issues that squarely have to do with race and class, and how all of these systems are very clearly connected to one another. So we can't have a high quality K-12 education system if we don't have universal access to a computer or to a device or healthcare, right? All of these systems that are obviously really strained right now all have an impact relative to the extent that all of our kids are able to learn. And it's not fair to put all of the onus on the K-12 education system when we know that all of these other systems are broken as well. That's not an excuse for the K-12 system, right? So we always need to continue to innovate and really continue that we are doing more to serve all kids. But we also have to acknowledge that there are all these systems that are very connected, And as a community, I think that we need to have a much more coordinated approach. And we need to be much more brave, to be honest with you, to really start to name the inequities and then to find solutions towards them. And it needs to be a comprehensive approach. And I think that what we've seen over the last, say, 8 to 12 weeks is we've seen many of these things exposed in a new way. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us, in particular white people, to make sure that we're naming them and that we are moving forward really comprehensive strategies to try to more effectively ensure educational equity for all of our kids. Because as you know, George, this is not going to be a short-term challenge. We're looking at 1, 2, or maybe even 3 years of a new normal that we have to get out in front of, because our kids, in particular, our most marginalized kids, cannot afford to have already wide disparities continue to get even wider. And it seems to me like our city needs to challenge and confront many of these things in ways that we maybe haven't, because the establishment, and I would say that we're one of those, oftentimes likes to talk about the great things about our city, and there are a lot of great things about our city, but we sweep a lot of the racial disparities under the rug. And I think it's time to stop that. And I think it's time not to be quite as nice and to start to have these hard conversations across races. And that's why I'm so excited to be here today.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. I have a couple of maybe follow-up questions that will come up, but I want to get quickly back to Alicia, Superintendent Johnson. Now, one of the things that Brandon mentioned was the bravery that is needed to mitigate the inequities that exist within not only our general society but also within our school systems. So, based on where you sit and the challenges that you have, and your goal being empowering students with critical thinking skills and be able to be good participants in this community, what are some things that you think we will need to give up that was more into the outcome-based way of looking at education? And what opportunity is this situation creating to come up with some new ways of helping students to, one, do serious critical thinking, creativity, be responsible for what they do, and create aspects of diversity and helping teachers and parents collaborate. New thoughts. I mean, this pandemic is providing an opportunity for all of us to take a look at what has happened, and we realize that a lot of things work for a few and don't work for everybody else. I mean, it's become very, very obvious now. Mm-hmm. So based on your position, what are the new thinking and the new behaviors and new strategies that you think you will be interested in implementing to support student-parent collaboration within Indianapolis and especially within the IPS system? What kind of bold ideas do you have to share with